Shoe cover.
A lot of bless. Okay. Epigraph. You only live twice. Once when you're born, and once when you stare death in the face. Ian Fleming. He looked at me and asked the question I've been trying to answer for 2.5 years. Who did you lose? I want to say my father. I want to tell how I couldn't muster the superhuman strength to lift him from the bathroom floor. How I cradled his head in my lap and begged him to wake up while 911 took the scenic route to our house. How those ass clowns never even came. How he came to in my arms and I forced juice into his shaky hands while he leaned against the bathtub trying to get his bearings. How I just thought his sugar was low till he told me he couldn't breathe. I want to tell how I hung up on 911 when my father slurred his words enough to ask me to take him to the hospital. How he stood and managed to walk to the car with me holding him up on one side. How I drove twice the speed limit down the freeway. How I sat beside him in a wheelchair. How I screamed for help when his breathing got worse. How they took him behind a curtain. How I sat in the hallway alone. How his heart rate went from 38 to 0. How I heard the flatline. How all the hands in the room engaged in CPR. How I sat in the hallway alone, begging a God I wasn't on speaking terms with not to take my daddy from me. How the tears in my eyes were cesspools. How the doctor said resuscitation, said ventilator, said my father's name like I needed to start using past tense. How I sat in that hallway alone, crying into a mask at the height of a global pandemic that I knew would mean saying goodbye through a curtain or a glass, if at all. How my mother and my sister were coming but would get there after all was said and done. He asked me, who did you lose? And I tell him, my father was like Gil Scott-Heron's Detroit. We almost lost him. That flatline morphed into a steady rhythm with compressions and breaths. A pacemaker hardwired into his body's circuitry keeps his heart rate steady now. My father died and didn't die at the same time. So the only person I lost was the woman who didn't know what it felt like to lose him.